right here is a case of where both sides can be 100% correct, but also at the exact same time, 100% wrong. Meaning that one side does what it always does, and the other side of the argument, they really picked a very bad time to call for a truce.
People who advocate violence are people who are not particularly familiar with violence. Professional fighters try very hard not to get in street fights. We know how ugly true violence is. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, war, yeah, violence. If it came to your doorstep, you would be begging for peace. We may want war when it's somewhere else. We may want war for theaters and theatrics and ideologies and think war is funny to look at on Twitter. But when it comes to you, you would run like as fast as you could and beg for.
I wanted to talk about this little beef between Andrew Tate and Ben Shapiro. So I promise you guys that this video right here will be relatively brief. And of course, this video once again was supposed to come out on Wednesday, but then again, though, here we are. So as most of you would already know, Israel is in it right now with Gaza. Now I'm showing you guys some more B-roll footage here, some of the things that's going on. Of course, there are people out there saying it's mixed in with other videos. Still at the same time, though, we've not received anything that has debunked that. And of course, Community Notes has been going crazy on X. Now, really quick, I don't always go to X for everything, but of course, it does help to, let's just say, get some of the things that people are saying. And of course, I really found this very, very, very weird that Shapiro would post this one. But of course, if you guys know who Ben Shapiro is, you know he's not the biggest Trump guy. But of course, he said earlier today that if Trump was still president, this would not be happening. However, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys right now that it probably would have happened regardless. And of course, I'll talk more about that in tomorrow's video. However, the timing of it is what in the world I think is so strange about it. But don't worry, we'll also talk about that at the end of the video as well, because I did say something in the video that I released earlier today about this at the very end. And I think I'm going to give you guys a much further expansion on it. I don't think I expand on it enough. With that right there being said, though, let's go ahead and talk about this right. Also, one more thing, too, to end the week, we are going to come back to this topic, even though YouTube has gone out of their way to demonetize every single video that has came out on this topic. We're going to go ahead and talk about it anyways. And, of course, that is some of the stuff like what you're seeing now with the Palestinian rallies, like in Dearborn, Michigan, and, of course, in New York, and how the left has actually responded to this. And, oh, yeah, that's right. We got a guy who is a congressman who has decided to leave the Democratic Socialists of America because he has finally seen that these people are all, for the most part, just pro anything against Israel. So with that right there being said, though, let's go ahead and dive into this. Of course, it started with a Twitter beef, okay? This is exactly how this entire thing started. And of course, seeing how it is that Andrew Tate has got the most viewed video on the Daily Wire, which is actually his interview with Candace Owens, roughly right around 6 million views. This right here would be a little bit awkward, especially for Jeremy Boring and, of course, for Ben Shapiro to even have this conversation, or at least get into it with Mr. Tate. And as you guys saw at the very, very beginning, he did a bit of a video talking about if the war came to your doorsteps, quite frankly, you would not do anything. You would be begging for peace. I've been saying for a long time that there are this such thing as the phony tough, okay? The phony tough guys love to run their mouth, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to be in the comment section saying, every time we turn around, Ben is always advocating for another war, especially if it involves the country of Israel. Now, let me go ahead and say this right now. One of the main reasons why it is that people automatically jump to the assessment that, and I'm not the biggest Ben Shapiro fan of the world. If you've been subscribed to my channel for a long time, you know that I'm one of the very, very few conservative voices out there that doesn't really and truly, well, there's actually a lot more than just me, that doesn't really care too much for the guy, because he oftentimes loves to leave stuff out, especially when it comes to polls, and he always gives very, very bad political advice. He's great on the issues, but when he gives overall political strategy advice, he always ends up being completely wrong. And of course, with Andrew Tate, if you've watched my previous videos on him, my thinking process about Andrew Tate is I don't really truly know enough about the guy to make an actual honest-to-God judgment call on him. I know that he's very successful, but I also know he's got a lot of baggage. The things that are going on in Romania, the things about the cam girl business, everybody thinks he's operating a trafficking ring. You know, you got to watch your words here. You can't say certain words, which, by the way, I'm rolling across the screen right now without YouTube getting upset and then suddenly saying you can't earn any money off this video. But then again, at the same time, here we are. It's an age of censorship. It's just the way that it is. The thing about it is this here, though. While Tate may be saying some things that help men out that are actually good, I think that in this case right here, he may have actually gotten this one wrong. Now, guys, I'm going to roll some of this. This where it came from Tim Pool. He was covering some of this, but I'm going to come on the other end because there's a lot of things that people are not seeing on the Tate front, and they're automatically jumping to conclusions on the Shapiro front. And of course, I'm here to tell you that Ben was going to do this anyways, but then again, though, he is also Jewish, so you would probably expect this to happen. Let's go ahead and roll this first part.
True violence is. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, war, yeah, violence. If it came to your doorstep, you would be begging for peace. We may want war when it's somewhere else. We may want war for theaters and theatrics and ideologies and think war is funny to look at on Twitter. But when it comes to you, you would run like as fast as you could and beg for peace. The only
I will say Andrew Tate is correct, but he's somewhat wrong. And the reason I say he's wrong only is because that they wouldn't just beg. They'd be crying. They would have snot pouring from their nose, all over their mouths with tears. Grown men screaming and begging, crying and praying. When you look at all the news around people supporting the conflict and the war, these ideologues in New York clapping and cheering these far leftists. Here's the funny thing. If one of these far leftists in support of Palestine was in Israel, protesting Israel, and they went down to this music festival and were actually saying things like this is wrong and Israel should not do what they're doing in Gaza, Hamas would have beaten them to death and dragged their corpses through the street. Why? Because they're Americans. Doesn't matter what you support. The issue is that in war, no enemy combatant is going to stop and ask the individual at this rave or whatever, the colonizers, whatever they want to call them. They're not going to stop and ask, do you support Palestine or Israel? They're going to say, we are here and we're taking this land and you're all evil. That's the reality of war. If war really came to everyone's doorstep, people really don't get it. There are a lot of people who think they're badass and they're like, I could survive and I could do it. And it's funny when even I say things like I wouldn't be able I specifically left conflict zones because conflict got too hot. They're like, Tim thinks he's so tough and he could survive. I'm saying quite the opposite. When I was covering these conflicts, I was in Turkey during the Gezi Park unrest.
You're probably wondering why in the world did I give you guys a clip where there was nothing mentioned about Tate except, of course, Tristan Tate's tweet. Well, there's a reason for this. It's called a priming piece. The reason why I'm talking about this is because there's a lot of people out there running their mouth, basically saying, well, let it come to our doorsteps and let's see what the hell happens. We're all armed, all that type of stuff there. And of course, I've been saying this for a very long time that an armed society is a happy society. But I've also been very much a big believer in people training and people being able to have the know-how and, of course, the killer instinct to be able to put a threat down. And of course, I've talked about this in the previous video, and I mentioned this in the section. This was a video I did on who benefits from this. That's a very, very good likelihood that a lot of the people from the Middle East, of course, those where they're being displaced in Gaza, that the Biden administration is so absolutely stupid because it's really Obama who's running things that he could very, very possibly bring some of these people over. Gaza Strip has about 2.2 million people that live in that area, and I could see a situation where you could end up with about 400,000 or 500,000 people ending up crossing our border again, because obviously we're not checking anything, and of course we've got people in big cities blaming Greg Abbott for it. But in reality, if Joe Biden wanted to put a stop to this, he could have put a stop to this a long time ago. He's not doing this. He's hoping to pad the vote totals in 2024 and beyond. However, people are obviously getting sick of it, and of course, it's led to a third-party candidate. But we won't mention too much of the politics in this right here. The thing is, this right here, you've got a lot of people running their mouth, and of course, a lot of people are looking at Ben Shapiro because he is the main person that you would expect to say something about what's going on in Israel. As I've said before, he is in fact Jewish. However, a lot of people are taking the side of Andrew Tate on this, and as I've told you guys before, I don't really know enough about Tate, even though I've done a couple of videos on things that he said, and I like a lot of what he says. However, I've done some more digging on him, and here's the thing. Basically, what's going on here is that Andrew Tate sent out a bunch of tweets saying that we need to go for peace. He also put this tweet here up. However, there is a problem with all these tweets that I'm showing you guys. Here's the problem. Andrew Tate posted those tweets to Ben Shapiro 3 days after the entire ordeal started. You see, Hamas had already attacked Israel. They had already gone in, started kidnapping people, started killing innocent civilians. Of course, I talked about this in previous takes. Jake Shields' very, very dumb take on Israel stripping down prisoners because obviously these people love to stick bombs on their body and try to kill themselves in the process while trying to get you, because they believe they go to heaven if they die in combat. And also, to go on top of this right here, it's a security measure that you need to do that, so that way you know people are not strapping anything else. Also, God knows what kind of information you can find on people, notes, all kinds of crap like that. I didn't really break that down that far in yesterday's video, but still at the same time, though, you've been getting a lot of very dumb takes. I'll show you guys some very dumb takes on Friday, because the situation is just getting stupider and stupider and stupider, and the response, of course, coming from the left is one that you might would think these people are eating themselves, because a lot of people are waking up to the possibility that maybe they were on the wrong side, and they're starting to actually see this. But we'll cover that in the video on Friday. The thing is this right here. Tate posted all those tweets, but like I said, he posted those tweets after Israel began to go on the counteroffensive. Now, look, it doesn't matter who in the hell really and truly, like how long this has been going on for, 75 years, whatever. I'm worried a little bit more about who threw the first rock. Like, if you come into my country and start blowing things up and start snatching people up, I'm probably going to be a little bit pissed. And I'm probably going to hit your land, and I'm probably going to go to the extreme to get the message across, don't screw with us. And something else, too. Tate, and I need to say this really quick. And like I said, I'm not saying this to be a jerk. I'm just telling you the truth. A few years ago, Andrew Tate was a Christian. Then he was an atheist. Said he was leaving Christianity and becoming an atheist because Christianity was weak. Okay. Then he became a Muslim. Only recently. And what a lot of people are missing is that Andrew Tate posted these tweets while the attack was going on. Allah Akbar, basically. Allah demands justice. These right here are the things that they would say going into combat. I know this because I've been to Iraq twice. I've been an OIF veteran. And I got a lot of friends, a lot of guys I serve with who can actually give you the personal stories. That this right here is what they scream. Infidel, Allah Akbar, God be great, all that type of stuff. That's what they do. They do that in the process before they actually blow themselves up in order to get to you. This is kind of who they are. I think what the hell is really and truly going on here is that Andrew Tate is just a little bit upset that Israel is on the offensive. But let's watch a little more.
Maybe. Mario Nawfal says, Justin, the U.S. Special Reporter for Human Rights in Palestine, we are horrified by what is happening, and we call for a truce. And Ben Shapiro says they can F right off. Why? Well, Ben Shapiro is looking at it this way. Hamas killed a bunch of civilians. They fired 5,000 rockets from civilian locations, from hospitals and schools, into Israel, targeting civilians, and celebrated it. Israel responds by blowing these targets up. There's collateral damage, and it affects civilians. So he says, F right off, we're going to take out Hamas. Andrew Tate says, Mr. Tough Guy, let me assure you, as someone who has done his own fighting, as opposed to excitedly encouraging others to do it for him, while sitting at a home in a comfy chair, peace is always worth a conversation. And I agree with Andrew Tate. Ben Shapiro says, he said, Ben Shapiro then said, criticized Andrew Tate for pimping out women, saying that people who are raping and rape women and kidnap children must be eradicated. This is the issue. Ben Shapiro is calling for the people who rape women and kidnap children to be eradicated. But the point being made by Andrew Tate is that there are civilians caught in the crossfire. There's no answer, man. I'm not going to get in the middle of this. I don't know what to tell you. I have no idea. I agree with Ben Shapiro. The raping and murdering of kidnapping of children, the killing of civilians, these people must be stopped. And then the argument is, yes, but civilians are being killed in the crossfire. And it is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. It's war, baby. If Hamas wages war and uses civilian locations, civilians will die. Sympathize with Israel for sure. It's war. People want to tell you who's right, who's wrong, and they get so insane about it. Try having a rational conversation with someone. You can't. It's crazy. We've had guests on Timcast IRL. Their blood boils. They start saying, Israel has done this, Israel. And I'm like, calm down, dude. It's war. Acting like Palestine is not causing problems or killing civilians. Bro, it's all bad. But the logic here is like, they go back to 1948. Israel did this. Sure, they did. What do I do now? I'm alive now. How do we stop the fighting? The answer is not allowing Hamas to go and kill civilians. Maybe this could be the end of Gaza. I don't know. I have minimal first aid training. I do. I have first aid training, hostile environment training, better than the average person. But you know what you need? You need former military. So a lot of news organizations hire former military with security expertise and a decade plus in the field who know how to handle war to provide the information and the context on the ground. That's where I say I'm out. I couldn't do it. I'm just some dude who can handle some riots. That's it. If war really broke out, man, I'd probably do better than most only because I'm listening to the news. But, the average person, their capabilities. Tristan Tate tweeted, people on Twitter who I notice aren't in the Middle East are trying to drag every follower into an absolute position. He says, reminder, you can sympathize totally with the Palestinian cause and also condemn the actions of individual soldiers aligned with Hamas. Sympathize totally with Israeli standpoint and condemn the carpet bombing of neighborhoods containing women and children. Stop trying to force everybody into absolute alignment with everything done by one particular side. People who say there are gray areas aren't wrong. I pray for peace. I agree with the overall message, but I still have to push back to a certain degree. When he says that you can sympathize, he's right. But let me just point out, the people claiming that Palestinian civilians are not Hamas, yet the people in support of Hamas view this as their resistance fighters. They do. I don't want civilians being harmed or killed, and many of them are not fighting. But this is war. That's it. There is no answer. There is no simple solution. Collateral damage happens in war. If Hamas wages war and uses civilian locations, civilians will die.
Let that one run a little bit longer, and I chose to keep the part in about the phony tough and what people can actually experience as far as what people will probably say as far as like the type of experience somebody might have if they're in a conflict zone. Tim, I don't agree with him on everything, but of course Tim will make some very, very good points from time to time. And he also makes some very bad things he has said too. That's just find to be completely off the wall, but still at the same exact time. Tim is a journalist who has been overseas to war zones, and he's actually covered some things, or at least he's covered the Egyptian Civil War, the Arab Spring. He's covered a lot of this stuff, so he's actually had himself in harm's way. So it's not like if he saw something, he would be completely, unearthed by it. I think that it's very possible he might not be as affected. Obviously, me, somebody who's been to a war-torn area twice already and been trained for it, my nervous system is probably going to kick in. If something else was to happen, like if something was actually coming to the doorsteps, I probably would not handle it immediately very, very well. I'd probably handle it the next few seconds afterwards because there is a bit of a shock period. Things just got to kick in. Your heart rate goes up. Your sympathetic nervous system goes up. Next thing you know, you're ready to go. I'm just simply saying this way is normal for people to at first to, somewhat freeze. But as far as people begging, yes, there are people who, in the event of something that goes not the way they intended to go, would in fact beg for peace. Of course, Andrew Tate was bringing that up. However, here's the thing, and don't worry, I'm going to hit Ben too, okay? I don't want you guys to just think this was just some pro-Ben Shapiro piece. No, I'm going to hit Ben too in a second. Here's the thing that Andrew, I don't think that people seem to understand. Like I said before, you were posting, like Sneeko and everybody else, Palestinian flags when the entire attack was going on. You were very, very much pro-Hamas in the very, very beginning. Now you're suddenly wanting a peace treaty because your side's getting their ass kicked. That right there is what this right here really and truly is. So what you just accused everybody of doing, saying, we're going to be begging for peace if the war comes to us, that's really and truly what you did. Last I checked, Hamas had killed roughly, I think the death toll right now is somewhere in the thousands. That's the information that we're getting at this moment in time. And you, for whatever reason, you cheered on Hamas. You cheered on everything that was going on in the early get-go. And then now, out of the middle of nowhere, you suddenly want a truce because your team is getting their ass kicked. Sounds to me like it's pretty cheap. I did tell you, though, that Ben Shapiro was not getting off the hook in this take either. I listened to some of what he had to say. I agree with him on most of the issues. It's very hard to listen to Ben, his voice, all that type of stuff there. I typically agree with him about 99% of the time on the issue. Same with Matt Walsh, too. But I really, truly don't like these guys because I think they're actually out of touch with the modern working class conservative. It's just how I feel, but you got to give a man credit. You got to say when he's right, he's right. However, what Andrew Tate was saying earlier about Ben Shapiro sitting in what I guess you can call an ivory tower because the guy's never going to fight. I want you guys to pay very, very close attention to the next minute and a half here because I think this is where Tate is actually going, where Tate is actually trying to go at.
People are volunteering in mass numbers. Flights into Israel are packed. Flights out are largely empty. 150% of volunteer numbers have been hit. Now I want to read you some texts from people I know, brothers, sisters, friends in Israel. This from a member of my security detail in Israel. We just left a couple of days ago. He's been called up. He's 25 years old. Quote, on my way to join my brothers in combat. And this from a close friend, a doctor from the United States, who has responded to Israel's call urgently for doctors. Quote, I couldn't sit in Florida knowing what's happening. And this from a soldier in Gaza. Quote, today our hearts beat with fear. Who among us is going to die? And who will return safe and sound? We are your messengers in battle. We fight so that you can live in peace with your children, so you can stay alive. We are your protection. Will you be one of us? We go on this dangerous mission knowing that some of us will not return, but will ascend to our next position in a storm to heaven as Eliyahu the prophet did. We go there with devotion and dedication. We ask you to be our protection through your prayers. Protect us by going beyond yourselves through spirituality and good deeds. Pray for us. Pray that you will not see another mother bury her son. Pray that you will not see our women as widows raising our children in tears. Pray that our children will grow up knowing.
Let me ask you a question, dude. Let me ask you a very, very, very serious question on the topic, dude. When are you going to volunteer? When are you going to go? Let me go ahead and tell you guys something really quick. I am 38 years old. I've got injuries. I keep myself in relatively good shape. I told you guys earlier, if something was to happen, I probably would initially freeze for a few seconds before then moving because of the shock. But I can go ahead and tell you right now that a lot of young men may be called to get involved with this. And let's just say what I said about what happens as far as the situation with Palestinians possibly coming over here occurs in the very, very big cities. It would be me. I would be out there on the front line probably fighting back against it, as well as police departments and those in the actual streets. If something was actually in my area, I would be on the street fighting. Ben would not be doing that. He would still be sitting inside of his, let's just say he'd still be sitting in his very, very wealthy suburban home. Costs like $2 million. Fact of the matter is that both sides have got a point here, but both sides are also wrong. Tate, of course, he decided to put these tweets out there, but of course he decided to do that after his side began to start getting their ass kicked, and Ben Shapiro just simply does what Ben Shapiro always does, chant for new wars. This leads me to one last thing, which is something that I mentioned earlier that I was going to go ahead and talk about because I wanted to expand on it a little bit more last night, but of course I was mostly in reaction mode. But after thinking about it, I want you guys to hear me out just for a very quick second. Let's just say that Joe Biden gave $6 billion to Iran, and then Iran turns right back around after that. They contact Hamas, and they contact maybe Hezbollah, and they say something along the lines of, well, you know what, we plan on going in next year, not right now, because, or maybe that was actually the plan, and I'll explain that here in a second, but they probably contacted Hamas, and Hamas got a little bit giddy about the possibility that Iran was going to finance the war, finance their effort into Israel. Now, obviously, Hamas, they decided to hit Israel. Iran, on the other hand, of course, they're going to stand in solidarity with their Islamic brothers, so they're going to do it openly. But then they turn right back around after behind closed doors and say that was not the plan. Why can't you people listen? You see, these people are very emotional. You see, what they love to do is they love to drop a bomb on you, and then they love to go back and tell everybody that they're the ones who hit you. While Israel right now is shutting off the tunnels and cutting off the water, the food, everything else that's going into Gaza. Not very, very bright. And of course, Israel, if you ever pay attention, or if you ever watch Perry Stone, then you would know that he does a lot of sermons, manifest, all that stuff there. And he said that Israel has been waiting for an attack to come at them just like this right here, to where they could then have an excuse to actually hit Gaza and basically take them to the cleaners. These same people, you know, they sit there and preach peace or whatever, but they also say from the river to the sea, meaning we want to push Israelis out into the ocean. That's how these people operate. I'm not going to go full gory or into detail on how these people respond and how they actually act. But the thing is this right here. These people, like I said before, are very emotional. They found out they were getting $6 billion, so they said, screw it, let's go ahead and strike, because they have they don't have the ability to actually sit back and think about things. You see, my theory is that Iran wanted Hamas, and they wanted Hezbollah to attack in 2024, so that way they could then be militarily prepared to go in at that point in time and actually start an actual honest-to-God war. They figure if we could start a war in Israel, this way it would keep the very, very weak Joe Biden in office, because more than likely, wartime presidents find a way to get reelected. Now, during foreign strife or whatnot, it's a little bit of a different story, but that right there has been my theory, is that they want Hamas and Hezbollah to wait. And of course, as a result of this, now Hamas and Hezbollah have attacked Israel. Gaza is basically being overrun. Israel did, of course, tell Gaza civilians to leave, but of course, people are going to say, where the hell are they going to go? We'll talk more about that tomorrow. And then to go on top of this, to make matters worse, Hezbollah is also going to be left out in the cold as well. Makes me think that this entire thing was extremely ill-timed, and I think that Gaza and Hezbollah both are going to end up paying for this dearly and probably be left out to dry as a result of it. So, very, very smart, very, 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 very honest, smart thinking out of these people. But then again, maybe that right there is a real reason why Cobra Tate wants the freaking truce. Who the hell knows? Guys, make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. This month is going to be a little bit wonky for me as far as posting. We're going to post one more video on this. I'm going to gather a few more things to actually make it a much, much larger video. It's going to come out on Friday. So make sure you guys stick around for that there. As always, please leave a comment in the comment section. I would love to get you guys' thoughts. Share it to Facebook, post it to your friends, and I'll see you guys later.